rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Andor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Oh, we are so honored. Always, every week here on Rebel Force Radio to have you join us. Thank you for hanging out with us. Got a great show coming up this week. I know what you're saying. They're all good. They're all great. But this one's especially great. We've got Star Wars author Michael Kogge joining us in the Cantina. And you might remember Michael. We've had Michael on the program before. Michael is the author of the young adult, the very acclaimed young adult adaptations of the Sequel Trilogy from The Force Awakens all the way through The Last Jedi. I remember when that Force Awakens young adult version came out. I feel like, not to take anything away from the author of the proper or the adult edition or adaptation, but there was something about that YA version that really got a lot of people talking, and Michael just really hit the sweet spot, and he just continued on with the other two films. So he's going to be joining us in the Cantina. Also, we've got some news about casting. We heard last week that Tim Morrison is, as of now, not going to be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, but we have confirmation of casting in that movie, as well as we're going to get to those Diego Luna comments that he made just a few weeks ago about Andor Season 2. All that and so much more here on Rebel Force Radio. If introductions are in order and you're new to the program, welcome. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Counting down the days till Skeleton Crew launches and watching the fallout of the Acolyte still continue online. Hey, guys, let's move on, all right? Let's move on. There's always another Star Wars to look forward to, okay? The Acolyte, it did its thing over the summer. It filled those summer months. I'll be honest with you, it was a lot of fun here on Rebel Force Radio to have fresh Star Wars to look forward to every week, regardless of what the audience and critical reaction was to that show. I don't really care. I'm in a bubble, the RFR bubble. And as far as what's going on in this bubble, the Acolyte is coming on, and we're looking ahead. We're moving forward to Skeleton Crew, looking forward to the Mandalorian and Grogu. We have some fresh casting confirmation this week that is very exciting. And, of course, coming next year, 2025, Andor Season 2. How excited are we for Andor Season 2? Well, we're busting, because I think Andor Season 2 is going to really, really, really deliver in more ways than one. And when I say that, I mean in more ways than one. I think the writing is going to be tight. I think the acting is going to be tight. I think it's going to be shot beautifully. And I'm all basing that off of not only Andor Season 1, but Rogue One and other Tony Gilroy produced events like Michael Clayton, etc. And the Bourne Identity. I mean, Tony Gilroy delivers. And so we're looking forward to that. We're not looking back. We're looking forward. So Andor Season 2, we have some comments that Diego Luna made at the San Diego Comic-Con, and or was it D23?
I think it was D23, yeah.
Yeah, all these conventions. Jeez. But, and I'm still recovering from Fan Expo Chicago, which was a couple of weeks ago. I still am licking my wounds from that because...
and the Blues Brothers Fest. I mean, what a weekend.
Oh, it was
what a weekend. So go back and watch or listen to Rebel Force Radio. Jimmy Mack takes you on a play-by-play via a video slideshow. And that video slideshow can be seen if you are an all-access member of Rebel Force Radio on Patreon, by the way. So all-access members get full show videos.
It's been on Patreon. I'm targeting YouTube though. I gotta spread the news of the debauchery that went on at Fan Expo Chicago with myself and one Mr. Baby Belushi,
Mr. Baby
Chris Sorrentino. But there's a lot going on, and we always want to hear from our fellow Star Wars fans, the people who listen to RFR, the people we value the most. So, Jason, you want to dive into some voicemail?
Let's do it. Here we go.
Do it.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Hey guys, this is Kyle, Patreon member, so on, so forth. Love the show, love you guys. You're like a security blanket for me. Anyways, watching Return of the Jedi with my daughter last night, a 6-year-old, and I got to thinking, this is just so random, but I would think that you guys could carry on a conversation about it. It might not even last that long, but just the thought I had was, whenever Leia sneaks in and stalls out Han Solo, why did Jabba let her do it? You know, his favorite decoration in that front room. Why let her do it just to sit around and laugh, which my daughter said he sounds like Santa Claus doing his ho, 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 ho. But, I mean, I'm just curious to speculate on why did he let her do it. Anyways, not sure if this is an important enough voicemail to even just have somewhat of a conversation about, but love the show. Definitely keep listening, and may the force be with you.
Hey, thank you very much. There are no small questions in Star Wars. My goodness, we've been dissecting this stuff for almost half a century here. The question is, why did Jabba allow Leia to sneak into Jabba's palace and rescue Han Solo? Clearly, after Leia frees him from his carbonite slab, Jabba and his denizens are not sleeping like she thought they were. They're wide awake. They're behind the curtain. They're laughing, and they think this is something else. So why would he let someone ruin his favorite decoration, as he calls it? I got to admit, as most of you who listen to the show regularly know, Return of the Jedi is my sentimental favorite Star Wars film. First one I have total memory of seeing in the movie theater multiple times in the summer of '83. This is the first time I've thought of this question. This is a great question. Why would Jabba let this happen? Here's my thought, and then Matt can give his thoughts. First of all, Jabba never specified that he wanted Han Solo and carbonite. That wasn't part of the deal. He wanted Han's head. There was a bounty on Han's head. And so, and they don't even get into specifics as to whether or not he wanted him dead or alive. I think based on his altercation with Greedo in A New Hope, that it could have gone either way. I think Greedo was prepared to shoot Han and bring his dead corpse back to Han Solo for the bounty. So that's inconsequential, dead or alive. So he had the upper hand. He knew that Han and whoever his would-be rescuer was, they weren't going to escape, and how delicious it was going to be to see him walk the plank on one of his skiffs. So I think it just all played into Jabba's evil, decadent hands, webbed hands for something like this. I think that Jabba sees people like that in his life as playthings, things to be manipulated and toyed with. So I don't think he was all that particular. And then when it was revealed that it was a babe that rescued Han from carbonite, it just got even better. I think that's what Jabba was really laughing about was, I've just traded up Oolah for this babe. So I don't know, Mac, if you got a take on this, that's mine.
That's a great take. And I do have a take on this and have had a take for several years because the timing of it all is so puzzling. As soon as she unfreezes Han from the carbonite slab, these black curtains open up and there's a whole party behind them with Jabba and they're all laughing. My question is, how were they able to remain so silent as she was tiptoeing? She was tiptoeing and all of that. And she lit up the carbonite block and looked around. But meanwhile, they're all behind these curtains, these big monsters. And, so I've always thought about it and considered it. And there's something we have to keep in mind about the character of Jabba the Hutt. He always enjoyed to be entertained. Remember, the song ends, play another one. He lived for entertainment. And I think Jabba himself was something of a promoter of entertainment on the planet Tatooine. We know that he was sitting up in the main suite at the Mos Espa pod race. And he ran that whole thing, it appeared. He even hit the opening gong by spitting a frog head at it. And so Jabba was a big promoter. He was like the Bill Graham of Tatooine. And he was a great promoter. So Leia sneaks in. And the reason it is because Jabba's spies throughout Tatooine knew that was Princess Leia in the Bosch disguise. And he was putting on a show by pretending, she delivered Chewbacca. That's a good score for Jabba. Chewbacca has been under Jabba's skin for how long?
But you're saying that Jabba knew when Bao shows up with Chewbacca that was Princess Leia.
It was a setup.
It was a
setup. He teased her. He played games with her, let her believe she was safe, let her believe she pulled off the masquerade, pulled off the scam. Meanwhile, mighty and powerful Jabba, people don't just call him that because he's a big fat slug. They call him that because he's actually a very keen and savvy criminal warlord who knew what he was doing. And again, loved good entertainment. And to him, that was a comedy act because not only was he setting up Han Solo, he was setting up Princess Leia and exposing the rebellion for being weak and transparent so much that he could see right through the smoke show that they were trying to fool him with. He knew that wasn't bullshit.
Let me ask you, did he get the idea that this was all a farce from the moment 3PO and R2 showed up as a gift from a Jedi Knight named Luke Skywalker?
That's a good question. When did he know?
Yeah.
When did he know? But I believe I read some sort of authoritative quote back in the day that said Leia was being set up. And you're right, Jason, Jabba didn't demand Han be delivered frozen.
Right.
He wanted to execute Han Solo. That's why he placed a bounty on his head. He wanted Han Solo to be brought to him alive so he could march him off that sail barge plank into the Sarlacc pit. That was Jabba's end game. Hanging Han Solo up on the wall was just for you-know-whats and giggles.
Yeah.
And then Leia shows up. He knows what she's going to do. He teases her. He makes her feel this false sense of security. Tells all of his buddies about it. They spread the word. Hey, man, when everybody chills out for the night, we're just going to close the curtains here and hang out here and be real quiet. When she tiptoes across, unfreezes Han, and they think that they're going to escape. But then we'll whip the curtains open, laugh our asses off, and then throw those fools onto the sail barge the next day and walk them out to their execution at the Sarlacc pit. That's like the Jabba the Hutt Super Bowl, And Jabba makes money off of it too, because people make bets and stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
How long will they last once they walk off the plank? Things like that. The over-under is ridiculous. And Jabba has it all very much worked out in his favor. So that's what I think was going on. And I think there is some official acknowledgement of this via one of the many expanded universe books or legends books or reference books, like all of the great essential guides that I have all up in this bookshelf here. In one of those, I must have read that it was a setup, that Leia was walking into a trap. And they knew it from the beginning. So that's why you refer to Jabba as the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing Jabba the Hutt. Boshuda.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the question. Appreciate it. He goes, this might even only be just I don't even know if it's worthy of a conversation. Well, we just had like a 5-minute conversation here all about that. That's what makes this so much fun.
Are you kidding me? Kitster could pick his nose, and I will spend 3 entire episodes of RFR analyzing that move. Why is Kitster picking his nose? Because he's digging deeper into the Force.
All right. Hey, before we go any further into the program, if you want more conversation like this, where we could just riff on anything and all things Star Wars, you ought to check out Rebel Force Radio on Patreon.
Yes, yeah, because, a lot of it is riffing like this, and we're bringing in, like I said, 45 plus years of involvement with this franchise and knowledge of all of the different mediums in which the stories are being told and the events in which they're being celebrated, like conventions or film openings, etc. And in the latest RFR Q&A number 214, Star Wars Celebs in Phoenix, we feature a great conversation about Phoenix Fan Fusion, which took place earlier this year. And of course, RFR VIP Eric from Phoenix. You hear Eric from Phoenix on many episodes of RFR Q&A, and he calls into the after shows all the time. Well, he was there earlier this year at the Phoenix Convention Center, and he got to meet and sit in on panels featuring actors like Giancarlo Esposito, D. Bradley Baker, Natasha Lou Bordizzo, and Alan Tudyk. And Eric was rolling tape at all of those panels in which he contributed to the Q&A session. So you'll hear Eric from Phoenix asking some really fun questions of these great Star Wars actors at Phoenix Fan Fest. So that's the latest RFR Q&A. You can listen to the Q&A or you can watch the Q&A. We also offer a video portion of the show, as we also offer a video portion of every episode of Rebel Force Radio, the weekly RFR. People get to actually watch us do the show on Patreon. And so they get to see our entire conversation with Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan. RFR Patreon supporters have been able to sit down and watch those episodes. They also can listen to or watch complete episodes of The Babu Freaks, Star Wars fans located in Chicago, buddies of mine. We get together and we talk about what we've been experiencing as Star Wars fans in Illinois. And it's always a lot of fun. RFR RPG is another thing we do on Patreon, and so much more. Full show video, ad-free audio, early bird releases, bonus podcasts. If you love RFR, you can get so much more of it at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Become a supporter. Make sure you're supporting the health and longevity of this podcast by supporting us at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel Force Radio!
good news for you, my lord.
That's good news.
Come closer, I have good news.
Oh, yes, we have news. All right. Hot off the press here, we've got confirmation. Now, this was rumored, but now we have official confirmation, according to Deadline, one of the more trusted of the Hollywood trade, saying that Sigourney Weaver indeed has been cast in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So here it is, according to a Deadline. They ask, and the next movie you're going to film? And Weaver replies, I'm playing a role in The Mandalorian and Grogu, directed by Jon Favreau. I got to meet Grogu for the first time the other day. I'm filming that before I go to London for The Tempest at the end of the year. Deadline says, and then your work conquering all major sci-fi franchises will be complete. Is it a fun part? She says, yes, very. I'm looking forward to it. I can't say much about it right now, but it's fun to bounce between all these different universes. So there you got sci-fi royalty, Ripley, Sigourney Weaver confirmed to be in The Mandalorian and Grogu. And Jim, this comes on the heels of Tim Morrison last week here on RFR that we covered. So far, his phone hasn't rang when it comes to the Mandalorian and Grogu film, though he did say that he was going to be part of a season 4. This leads us to believe that this isn't just a straight up adaptation or film adaptation of season 4 scripts. This might have some new and different things. And maybe one of those things is Sigourney Weaver. Also, as we asked, wow, Peli Motto seemed to be sort of a doppelganger for Sigourney Weaver. As Ripley with the hair and all that. Could we be seeing a connection? Could there be a connection between Peli Motto and this character Sigourney Weaver is going to play?
Wow. Wowie, wow. I never even considered that for a second, but you are so true. We have made that visual connection between Peli Motto.
Yeah, come on, look at that.
Hairstyle.
That's Peli Motto.
Hairstyle.
Right there.
The zip up,
like the flight suit or mechanic suit. Yep.
The flight suit. I didn't even think of that. That's why I love this show. Is because these ideas get presented to me out of left field, and it just makes Star Wars so much more fun and better. And the speculation too, when you consider, she looks like Sigourney Weaver a little in those scenes. Yeah. And then they drop Sigourney Weaver into the show to take it up a notch, It drives our speculation through the roof. I love it. Now, Sigourney, obviously, she's the queen of so many franchises, Alien and Ghostbusters, and now she's moved into Star Wars.
Also, Avatar, we got to mention that.
Of course, absolutely. So she's going to be shooting The Mandalorian and Grogu, and then she's shipping off to the UK, to London, to be in The Tempest. And that obviously is a Shakespeare production, and Tom Hiddleston, who is Loki in the Marvel franchise, is going to be her co-star in that.
Oh, wow.
So
all right.
Her career is really kicked into high gear here, and it's great to see for any actor who gets older later in their career to really see this resurgence. The way that things were happening at Fan Expo Chicago because of the mere presence of Mark Hamill. It was like everything was shut down. So many people wanted to see Mark Hamill. All of a sudden, Mark is probably pinching himself going, what? He knew his star was very high in the 70s and 80s. But Mark in the 90s and 2000s was, he almost felt bad for Mark Hamill for being typecasted as Luke Skywalker, for finding difficulty getting jobs in feature films. And so it's like, oh, poor Mark Hamill. He had to resort to voice acting because his film career isn't going. And now he is being treated like a legend. And this is a guy who couldn't find work He couldn't find work in the 90s outside of voicing the Joker.
Well, he was working on that Black Pearl movie. Remember, he spent a lot of time working on that Black Pearl.
Well, that was
film.
his thing.
Yeah.
That was his thing. He also appeared in the original Flash live action
The Trickster,
series
yes.
As a trickster. And he was a weird, wacky character in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
I remember that.
He was like, I forget what he was, but it was crazy. And Mark had been out of the spotlight for so long that when he appeared in the Jay and Silent Bob film, they freeze framed it. When he first appeared, they freeze framed it and put a graphic on the screen with an arrow pointing to Mark saying, "Look, kids, it's Mark Hamill." You needed that because he was wearing some crazy makeup and stuff. I guess we needed that.
Yeah.
But Mark had been out of the spotlight.
One of my
favorite,
one of my favorite Mark Hamill cameos during that period when he wasn't really doing much was when he was on The Simpsons.
I can predict what you're going to say.
The Simpsons?
Oh, you're going to say Simpsons.
Simpsons.
I was going to say SNL.
Oh, no, I do love the Shop at Home SNL sketch. That is one of my favorites. But I loved him in The Simpsons because they did that whole thing, sort of take on the bodyguard. And there at the end, Homer is carrying Mark away from the theater. And that's a favorite. And I think that, I remember defending Mark to some people at one point saying, well, he's a washed-up actor and all that. And I'm like, you know what Mark's biggest problem is? He doesn't know whether he wants to wake up in his California home, his home in Hawaii, his great apartment in New York. I always knew that Mark was doing okay financially. He did okay with Star Wars.
Well, he wasn't suffering, but his career did.
But the career did, for sure, yes.
A lot of producers avoided him like the plague because he was so closely associated with the character of Luke Skywalker.
It's why he didn't get the film role in Amadeus.
And went to Tom Hanks.
It
would have been great in Mark Hamill's hands.
Yeah.
And he was portraying that character live on stage.
Right. Yeah.
On Broadway.
And the people in Hollywood said, I don't think they're going to buy him as
just a typical,
despite the fact that he's doing it 8 times a week.
So typical of the way Hollywood dumbs down the audience. We're smarter than that.
Right.
We recognize talent when we see it, and we recognized Mark Hamill's talent when he was shooting the original trilogy and beyond. So it is kind of a shame to see the way that he lost some prime years and had to, quote, resort to voice acting. When he appeared as the Joker, as the voice of the Joker in that original Batman series, there was no hullabaloo about that.
No.
It wasn't like a big coup, a big score for the Batman franchise. Nobody knew he was the Joker except for the freaks who stuck around for the end credits. And we saw Mark Hamill's name. And my first response was, boy, that doesn't sound nothing like Luke Skywalker. That can't possibly be the same Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And that was me in 1992. Boy, Mark Hamill as the Joker? What?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't sound anything like Mark. Little did we realize what a gifted vocal talent he is, as well as a very gifted actor, both on stage and screen. And so he basically shut down Fan Expo Chicago.
Amazing.
And he was charging prices that I felt were obscene for his photo and his autograph. We're talking in excess of $500, $600, $700, as well as charging tickets for his panel. Mark,
he's doing that. That's the Carrie Fisher trick when she did her one-woman show.
Mark probably walked away from that show with $250,000. What do I know? That's speculation.
Yeah.
But it was
I've heard numbers like that when he was charging less. I heard numbers back when he was only charging, $200 or $300 per autograph. people saying Mark's walking away with $300 grand in a weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
$250,000 easily.
Yeah.
I mean, baby,
I saw a lot of, I saw
really
people throwing shade at Mark about that, saying, "Oh, how dare he charge that much for his autograph?" Here's what I have to say. I'm a capitalist. I think whatever the market bears. So if Mark charges too much, he's going to have fewer people showing up in line. As long as he's got lines wrapping around the convention center floor, go for it, Mark. Everybody, makes decisions with how to spend their money. No one's got a gun to your head saying you got to have this Mark Hamill autograph. If you can afford it, you want it, go for it.
If the cost matches the demand.
That's right.
If people are paying that. I look at it as gouging. He's gouging. But there's a demand.
Right.
There's a demand, and he's one person.
Yeah.
With only so much energy over the course of a weekend. How much can Mark sign? How many meet and greets can he do? You got to pay to play. And Mark is certainly recognizing that, as well as the entire, as Carrie Fisher would call it, celebrity lap dance industry.
Boy, there are people doing cons these days that I never, ever thought you'd see doing these types of shows. I like that the stigma is gone away. There was a time where if you were doing convention appearances, that meant you were a has-been, you were washed up. But say that to guys like Ewan McGregor. I don't think Ewan McGregor is a has-been or washed up, and he's done shows. So I think it's a different world now when it comes to these sorts of things. And there's a closeness that we have to these characters or these actors that have played these iconic characters. And so it makes sense. I think it's an extension of the relationship that we've formed with them. And look, if you can make that kind of scratch by just showing up and signing an autograph. And here's the thing that I've observed about Mark. Now, it's been a while since I've seen him in person at a show. I watched him signing for people. And Mark is there with a smile, a couple of words. He seems very gracious, happy to meet people. He's enjoying himself. And that's very different than some of these celebrities that show up. You're like, why are they even there? Sometimes they've got glass separating them and the person that they're getting there. And I'm talking about after COVID here, folks. I mean, you still see that with some of these people, or they're barely conscious. They're sitting on a stool. They're half asleep. But Mark's not doing that.
The worst when they have the earbuds in and they're listening to the latest album from whoever.
Can you imagine?
They can't even hear.
They don't even know you're there.
They don't even know you're. They're the thing gets presented in front of them. They sign it. They push it over. They probably don't even look up. Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah. Some of them wear shades, so you can't even tell that they're sleeping.
Yeah.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah. Somebody's moving the arm as they sign the autograph. And it's just a scribble you get on an 8x10, and you paid $700. Sucker.
But anyway,
whatever you take away from it with you, even if that's the case, you got close to your idol. Sometimes being within the aura of the celebrity is what people are chasing. I'm not, ever.
No.
Well, maybe I am. That's why I keep coming back to Jason Swank every week, is because I'm chasing the aura.
We've been very spoiled, Jim. I know you feel that way about your radio career, in addition to what you've done with RFR, where we have had opportunities that the average fan doesn't. Through things like this podcast. And so being able to sit down with Mark Hamill and interview him, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was extraordinarily starstruck. I was immediately taken back in time to being an 8-year-old kid and just being totally obsessed and enamored with Luke Skywalker. But He is one of those personalities. One, he's a ham, which I love. He loves old showbiz and all that stuff. And he understands. He's a fan himself of things like the Beatles and classic Hollywood and all of that. So he understands what it's like to be in awe of celebrities and entertainers and stuff. So that really kind of disarms him when you meet him. So Mark Hamill, you know what? If you've got the $700 and you want to get your picture taken, more power to you.
I think Mark has embraced his status as a celebrity in the wake of the Star Wars sequels. Mark has really come to terms with his celebrity. And even more so than that, has been able to come to terms with the popularity of Luke Skywalker and what that character means to fandom. And he's seen it all right in front of his face. And I think that prior to that, he was more of a regular guy. And I'm not saying this changed Mark. It's changed his approach to putting himself out there as the guy who played Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
He puts himself out there and understands the value of it and what it means to people. I don't think Mark ever really understood that prior to his involvement.
I call that the leather jacket years. You remember those years?
Oh, I love the leather
jacket years of the late 90s and early 2000s when he would do very rare appearances. That when I think of Mark and that period of time where he just seemed kind of over it all and not really embracing it. That's what I think of.
Well, hey, the second chance, the sequel trilogy provided new life to Luke Skywalker, new life to Mark's career. It certainly has been a bolt of adrenaline to Mark's career. And I'd love to see it as he's in his early 70s now and had to suffer through a few decades of typecasting and being shunned by Hollywood producers because they only looked at him as Luke Skywalker. And he's an actor who has so much more to offer. And we're starting to see this in the latter years of his career. So I think it's great Mark is able to not only embrace it, but cash in on it.
That's right.
And if you want to hear our conversations with Mark Hamill, you could find them at the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rebel Force Radio. We have our 2 conversations with Mark Hamill there, and they're just great moments captured in Star Wars history of Mark Hamill prior to the success in the revitalization his career has received via the sequel trilogy. He was kind of still in that in-between area.
Yeah.
And so that's how me and Jason got access.
Yeah, we're not throwing down $700 these days
Hell no.
to talk to Mark. All right, well, let's switch gears here and talk about Diego Luna. He was at D23. He did an interview with the folks over at Rotten Tomatoes and all about Andor Season 2. Jim, I'm so excited about it. I did a rewatch over the summer of Andor Season 1 with my wife. I've talked about that. And
that's awesome.
Gosh, did she love that series. Ironically, or I should say coincidentally, we watched the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte together. And then in between episodes 2 and 3 of The Acolyte, I said, you never saw Andor. We need to watch Andor. So I started showing that. She forgot all about Acolyte. She forgot all about Acolyte.
You never came back to it with her?
Never came. Not with her, not on Acolyte. She was all about Andor. And so anytime we had a chance to sit down and watch some TV together, it's like, oh, let's watch another Andor. She absolutely loved it. She's what I would consider a casual fan. Occasionally surprises me sometimes with her references that she'll pull out.
Well, but, she's married to you for crying
married to me.
out
So
loud.
osmosis, I guess. But nonetheless, she does love dramatic TV, true crime, spy, espionage, all that stuff. So I knew that Andor would be more up her alley, and indeed it was. And again, after having done a rewatch on it, I'm so psyched for season 2. I am so psyched for season 2.
I refuse to do the rewatch until we get closer to the launch of season 2. I want that refresh. So I'm holding it off so I can savor it in the moment. There's not going to be any Star Wars series between Skeleton Crew and Andor. So that's when I'm going to jump on board. And really, because it is an incredible drama series based in the Star Wars universe.
Right.
And it has top-notch acting, top-notch dialogue, top-notch cinematography, top-notch acting, top-notch directing. These are the things that we want from Star Wars. And these are the things that may have been sorely lacking from a few choice streaming series over the last few years. You fill in the blank. So I think Andor is going to deliver, and I think it's going to scratch an itch that a lot of Star Wars fans need scratching. I think Skeleton Crew has a lot of potential, though.
I do too. I do too.
I heard from our pal Eastside Dave tonight. Good old Eastside Dave. New York radio personality, Eastside Dave. What did he have to say to me? He just is a random rant. Me and Eastside Dave throw random rants at each other from time to time. And what did he have to say? Which account did he reach out to me on? Oh, here it is. He says, I just got to say I can't wait for Skeleton Crew after show. I'm looking forward to this new Star Wars show, as I am a Stranger Things and Goonies fan. But I'm really looking forward to the RFR live shows. You and Jason and Tyler do an amazing job. I watch on YouTube on my TV, so I'm not in the chat usually. But you and Jason are the ones who rock. Oh. Anyway, RFR forever. Talk later, buddy. Eastside Dave, on-air host, Sirius XM, 92.3 K-Rock, 95.9 The Rat, Westwood One, Davey Mack Sports Program. But none of that stuff matters, because what you guys need to listen to, if you have a hang-up with The Acolyte, which I don't necessarily do as much as some other fans, but if you really feel a hang-up with The Acolyte after show and you're like, RFR is not driving the hammer down on this show as hard as I want them to do, then you need to check out Yaddle Chattel, hosted by Eastside Dave, Davey Mack, or what does he call himself? Darth David.
Yeah.
He has all these aliases. All right, so he's Darth David, and you got to listen to him, because it is some of the funniest rants you'll ever hear. He did this recreation of a Mog scene from one of the episodes of Acolyte that my underpants were wet after I was peeing myself, laughing so hard, listening to him recreate this Mog scene. And,
I know it's what you're talking about.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just have to recommend that to our friends out there who think we're too soft on The Acolyte. I'll point you in the direction of Yaddle Chattel, and that will scratch an itch for you, my friend. So, yeah, Yaddle Chattel, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Eastside Dave McDonald, great radio personality from the Anthony Cumia show, Ron and Fez, and as well as his own shows over the years at WRAT and beyond. He's got his own network. It's hilarious stuff. We love Eastside Dave around here.
All right, so getting back to Diego Luna at D23 and talking to the folks at Rotten Tomatoes. Jimmy Mack has curated some clips, some highlights from that interview. So, Jim, what do we got up first here?
Number one, I just have to say I love Diego Luna. His enthusiasm for future Star Wars projects like Andor Season 2 is off the charts. And he has a lot to say about it, too. And he doesn't feel like a guy who's carefully choosing every word he has to say. He comes at it with a sense of enthusiasm. And so in this first clip, we're just going to hear Diego talking to Rotten Tomatoes about season 2 of Andor and what makes him pumped up about it.
It's been 6 years now since I started talking about Andor. So,
and even longer since you've been playing the character.
It's been 10 years of playing Cassian. But again, if I was like, if we go back to this character, it's because we're gonna do something very special. Because for me, Rogue One is already very special. Yeah. It's a different film that connected differently with an audience and that reconnected with people like me that we've been like fans of Star Wars for 30 years, for 40 years. It's a long time. So it's a very mature show. It's very realistic, as you can be in the universe of Star Wars, right? This is a show about the people. This is a show about revolution and about everyday life in this galaxy. Therefore, we are very meticulous in the way we approach, every scene, every moment, every character, and I think people are happy because of that.
I like the way he says that, as realistic as you can be in Star Wars. That's perfect. It's a perfect way to describe Andor.
Yeah, it really should be the subtitle of
right.
Andor. It should be Andor, the most realistic tape of Star Wars you can imagine.
Right.
Andor. And Diego delivers on it. He's such a good actor. He's just such a good actor. And he fits this character so well. I just love him. So he talks a little bit more about the character and the evolution of the character that we see in Andor season 2.
Still a very conflicted man, someone that knows that he has to be part, that he has to become part of this movement, that the cause means something, that there's an opportunity for him to be part of something better, to bring change. But there's a lot for him to learn. There's a lot for him to also sacrifice. Very little events are going to show him that he could be different, but he has to believe. He has to believe in himself. He has to believe in the strength of the numbers, that a revolution represents, and he has to meet many characters. It's going to be a very rich second season because you were introduced to many characters in the first season, and there's so many characters that we all know have to come and be part of this for Rogue One to happen, right? Yeah. So it is rich, it is intense, and I don't know if in the first season we moved through 1 year. Now it's 4 years.
Yeah. So Jim, you were reminding us, I think it was last week, about what the way that Andor is going to season 2 is going to unfold, which is every 2 episodes will cover a year in Cassian's life. So 8 episodes in season 2. So we'll cover a period of 4 years, which will take us right up into Rogue One.
Originally, the approach to the Andor series was it was going to be a 5-season run, and each season would represent a year. Then Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna decided to look at a calendar, and they said, holy crap, we're going to be doing this for the next 20 years. Let's condense season 2, tighten up the screws, and provide a really quality story that fills in those 4 years throughout the course of a season, a 12-episode season. And Diego talks about how that all works, along with the time jumps included every 3 episodes. This is what we can expect from Andor. Time jumps every 3 episodes. Each 3-episode arc out of the 12-episode season will represent a year in Cassian Andor's development as a rebel standing against the Empire. So Diego talks about that in this clip.
There's 4 years before Rogue One, that's what we're gonna cover. And every 3 episodes is a year. So every 3 episodes is like almost like a film, and there's a time jump, and then we go to the next year, and then a time jump, and the next, and then the next, and then it's Rogue One. So it's 4 years, 5 different planets. Again, it's so intense, rich, and diverse in every possible way, Also because we introduce you characters that now you care about, that you have a connection with, no matter in which side they are of this moment in the history of the galaxy, right? We care about them, so there's a chance to go deeper on them and finish the arc. Tony Gilroy is great at doing that. He doesn't miss any opportunity, and he doesn't forget about his characters. Every character is gonna have his moment.
Yeah, so this is a lot different than season 1 as we were being introduced to these characters. Now they're a known quantity, and I gotta say, I mean, there's the budding romance going on there on the side of the Imperials. And I don't have instant recall of some of the names, but the Lady Imperial with the blonde hair.
Oh, Deidre Mirda.
Deidre, yeah, and
don't forget Bix.
Don't
forget Bix Kayleen.
How could you forget Bix Kayleen? She's the one I'm most concerned about. Bix. I'm most concerned about Bix. She's rescued there at the very end of season 1. But definitely the Mira and the guy that's always eating the cereal.
The cereal guy.
The cereal guy. Cyril is actually his name. Cyril.
Cyril, the cereal guy.
But I think that there's a lot of fans, a lot of people that are watching the show that are kind of rooting for them a little bit because there's sort of a budding romance between the two of them. And it's hard to find a lot of fault with Cyril because, he's a true blue, dedicated, loyal guy that is doing exactly what he feels is correct, which is to bring this criminal to justice. And so it is hard to see him as just a true villain. And then, of course, you got Bix.
He's too relatable.
Very relatable.
Way too relatable.
Right.
I mean, how many in the audience watching this has dealt with mommy issues? Cyril is dealing with serious mommy issues. He's also dealing with authority issues. He's also dealing with fitting in issues. Anybody watching this show can relate to that. Well, not me. I have no mommy issues, just in case my mom is listening. But...
Well, his mom's very overbearing.
He's an extremely relatable character, and his perspective of everything that's going down in Andor presents this incredible difference to what Cassian is seeing. And it plays out in such a dramatic way. When you really let it sink in, you start to understand the levels of which this storytelling is being told. And I love how you said, Jason, when you were breaking it down, we're dealing with a known quantity here.
Yeah.
With the Andor cast and characters.
Yep.
And we're going to have a mad connection to some of these characters when the season eventually debuts sometime in the first half of 2025. We're all going to rewatch it again. And many other fans are going to connect with the Andor show. Well, I've never watched it before. They'll be enticed by the season 2 hype that either the fans or the studio is providing, especially after that trailer drops. People are going to look at it and say, well, I watched The Acolyte, I watched Ahsoka, I watched Kenobi. I don't know. I'm looking for something deeper from my Star Wars. I'm looking for something that provides a more richer experience. And believe me, you get that with Andor Season 1 and Season 2 with the years being condensed into 3-episode arcs, 4 arcs along the way. I think they're setting themselves up for greatness.
I really think that Season 2 is going to do for Andor what going to Netflix did for the Clone Wars. You know, the transition over to Netflix really increased the viewership and the general permeation of the Clone Wars mythos into the larger Star Wars universe. I think Season 2 is going to do that. We have people telling us on the inside that the numbers on Andor have continued to increase since it was released. So this is the little engine that could, and I think by the time we get to Season 2, I think people are going to be surprised at how much water cooler talk there actually is going on about Andor. I think people are going to be very surprised.
Well, with Andor Season 1 encapsulating a full year of Cassian's growth and evolution into someone who is going to be a major contributor to the rebellion against the Empire. I mean, at times it felt like a slow burn. Yeah, a 12-episode season, each episode being in excess of 45, 50 to an hour long. It felt like a slow burn, but it really established character motivations. Diego Luna addresses Season 2 and how the story is going to roll out and the epic quality of the storytelling we're going to be getting in these 3-episode arcs is something that Diego Luna discusses openly with Rotten Tomatoes.
It's bigger. I don't know if you remember Ferrex as a place. You know, it's a city. There's so much happening. Well, this time there's so many Ferrexes. You know, there is many planets and many different communities we get to visit. And because of the time jumps, also the life of these people gets more and more complicated, right? So yes, it is going to be intense, complex, and very emotionally very full, you know, in so many ways.
You know, he is really trying here, Diego Luna. These Star Wars actors are so terrified of saying anything that hasn't been prepped for them by the PR team, and he's trying to keep it conversational and relatable, and he's doing a great job. So there's very little that these guys can come out and say. But it's good to know that the epic nature of this series is going to increase, because one of the things that was a turnoff for some Star Wars fans, especially in those initial episodes, and my wife even had the same observation, was, well, this doesn't feel like Star Wars, because some of the Star Wars tropes are not there. Some of the visual cues are not there. But by the time you get towards the end and you're seeing TIE fighters and you're hearing TIE fighters, and I love that Gilroy sort of builds up to this sort of reveal that you're in the Star Wars universe. And I think what Season 2 is going to do is you're already there. You know, by the end of Season 1, you are ensconced in the Star Wars universe, and I think Season 2 is going to pick up right where that left off, and it's only going to build into this crescendo that is Rogue One. So it's got to be more epic. So I think Diego's really tipping us off on that.
Right. And it becomes more tangible as far as its connection to the overall Star Wars mythology. And Diego talks about how the story told in Andor Season 2 will take you right up to the doorstep of Rogue One.
Mm.
The first scene we see of Cassian in Rogue One, everyone knows that scene. he goes and talks to this informant, right? So yes, we are gonna finish just minutes before that.
Wow.
And that's why I suggest that you don't see the last episode without having 2 hours to then watch Rogue One straight away, because it is, I mean, and that, this is the beauty of Star Wars and what Lucas has done, right? Lucasfilms, this opportunity to go like, okay, we're gonna take this format that allows you to tell in, I don't know, 12 episodes, all the information you need to watch a film, It is a different language, and film becomes different if you can answer all these questions. Right now, you know exactly who Cassian is, but when you watched for the first time Rogue One, you just saw a guy that you had no clue.
Right.
His accent probably was like the first piece of information you had, but there's no information about Cassian in Rogue One.
Right.
And now we're gonna let you watch Rogue One with all this information and this backstory, right? So I think it's cool.
I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say outside of Luke Skywalker, or let's say outside of the Skywalker family, because you got to include Anakin and all that and stuff. I think the journey and the story of Cassian Andor is going to be realized as one of the most compelling and the most complete and the most rewarding in all of Star Wars. I really do. And I feel like it wasn't done on purpose. It's not like that's what they sought out to do, which was to create this hero that's going to stand toe-to-toe with a Luke Skywalker in some way. It happened organically. They just told a great flippin' story. And then we as fans connected with it, and you combine a great story and a great character with a great actor and a great writer and director and all of that. It just all came together. And that's why I think sometimes you just can't go into these things saying, we're going to create this. We're going to do that. We're going to create a character that everybody loves as much as Luke Skywalker. It doesn't work that way.
I hear you, Jason. I hear you loud and clear. While I was listening to you talk, I thought about the alternate tales being told throughout the years via expanded universe about how the rebels acquired, how Princess Leia specifically acquired the plans to the Death Star. Because that's never spelled out for us in the original trilogy, not once. But Rogue One fills that void. The thing that filled the void prior to Rogue One was a video game, a PC game called Dark Forces. And it was Kyle Katarn, who is the guy who acquired the plans to the Death Star. And he did it through the first level of the Dark Forces video game. So there wasn't much drama there. They didn't really apply any sincere story to that. It was the opening level of the Dark Forces video game. It was the level where you're still trying to figure out what the controllers do and how to make them work. But it did establish that within the canon until the expanded universe was abolished, and it was nothing but blue sky for Lucasfilm as a movie studio to create stories. John Knoll presented the story to Lucasfilm and said, I want to tell the story about how the rebels stole the plans to the Death Star and delivered them to Princess Leia, which kicks off the entire original trilogy. And I'll be damned if Rogue One didn't do just a perfect job in establishing that story. Yep. Now we're getting a prequel to that is establishing a perfect foundation and build up to that story being told. I think a lot of the fan base and a lot of the general public who didn't really pay much attention to Andor season 1 will jump on board with this show. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what it takes to build a television classic, is it has to go through a few seasons. And unfortunately, in the streaming age, where seasons are being delivered complete and they're being thrown at audiences all at once, and the studios take a month to decide the fate of a season 2, it doesn't work because you have to build your story. You have to build your audience. You have to develop your characters and let the story evolve. And television doesn't have room for that anymore. Not in the streaming age. Maybe on network television it still exists, but not in the streaming age. Thank you, Netflix.
The other thing that streaming really suffers from, and this is going to sound sort of counterintuitive because you're going to say, well, Swank, you can watch it anytime you want. But a lot of shows benefited back in the time of network television, especially when it was in its heyday, of summer reruns. So if you missed it during the proper season, you could catch it again in the summer. And a lot of shows developed because people were, they had different schedules and stuff in the summertime. So maybe it allowed them to watch where they didn't watch and, maybe over the busier holidays and fall and, kids going to school and all that. You had a little more downtime in the summer, maybe you're able to watch. And it created or enhanced and added on to the fan base of certain shows. And you're so right, Jim, when you say a month. I remember a good friend of ours here, Matt Lanter, was involved in I thought a fantastic show on Netflix. There was one season of it. It was a superhero show. And
Jupiter Rising? Jupiter?
Was that what the name of it was?
It's called Jupiter Rising. I think that was the name of the show, and I enjoyed it very much, too.
I loved it.
And it was one of those takes on the not-so-perfect superhero.
Yes, right.
Which I've always enjoyed since the 80s in The Watchmen.
It debuted. It was one of the highest
Jupiter
debuts.
Ascending. No, that's not it. Sorry.
It had a huge premiere. And I remember reading in the trades that it was one of the best premieres that Netflix had had. It was trending. It was the number one show trending on Netflix. A month goes by after the last episode was on, because they dumped the whole series at once. A month goes by after it was all on, and they announced no season 2. No season 2 because whatever.
Jupiter's Legacy.
Because it's part of a whole universe. But and it wasn't just because our friend was in it. I really loved the show. I thought it was great. I know a lot of people compared it to The Boys and all of that, but that was The Boys is a little intense. It's not necessarily something you want to sit down and watch with the family. Whereas this was little bit more. This was a little bit more palatable for family viewing, and I just thought it was great. But the point being that it was literally about a month after the premiere that the decision was made. Nope, it's not getting a season 2. And I thought that's insane to me. Such a small compressed period of time for something to catch on, but that's the bar. That's where they sort of decide, and so I'm sympathetic to the big fans of The Acolyte. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I can't say I'm a big fan of The Acolyte, and I'm a little suspicious of the people that identify as fans of The Acolyte before they identify as fans of Star Wars, but I'll leave that there. But I'm sympathetic to those that are super disappointed. I've been there with series that you love, and you're so frustrated. You're like, you didn't even give it a chance. But for whatever reason, they've got their thresholds and their benchmarks for how many hours watched, minutes watched, whatever it is, that they decide is deserving of a second season. So anyway, I am so happy that Andor avoided all of that by Lucasfilm and Disney saying this is going to be a 2-season, or committing to 2 seasons from the get-go. Because as people, I think, have pointed out, if this had to be measured by the same stick as The Acolyte, it may not have gotten a season 2.
Well, that's the difference between Tony Gilroy and the clout he has in Hollywood and the resume he has when you compare it to a Leslie Headland and the clout she has in Hollywood and the resume she has. match them up. I welcome you to. You can look it up on IMDb or anywhere on the internet, and you can clearly see Tony Gilroy is a heavyweight based on purely experience and nothing more.
Right.
Purely experience. The man has paid his dues. He knows what he's doing, and he should be giving carte blanche when it comes to creating a Star Wars story. The biggest problem with The Acolyte is they introduced a lot of noobs, a lot of unproven talent, and gave them carte blanche and a $180 million budget to create a season of Star Wars. And we saw the end results, okay? Money doesn't make greatness. You have to have greatness behind the camera. You have to have greatness behind the typewriter. You have to have greatness behind the keyboard and in the casting department and in the cast itself. And everything needs to be of a certain level to create a success that Star Wars deserves. And Tony Gilroy has earned that. And that's the difference. That's the difference. You give a Tony Gilroy a green light to create 2 12-episode seasons. You give that to him because he's earned it via his experience and success. So I think that's the biggest problem with Star Wars right now is the failure to attract talent or to open the door to talent that actually has paid its dues, who has the fortitude and knowledge of the craft of filmmaking and storytelling. You have to have that. You can't use Star Wars as the farm league.
Right.
And that's what I fear Lucasfilm has been doing. They've been taking Star Wars and treating it like a farm league, a place to develop talent. You need developed talent to tell Star Wars stories for it to be successful. And I think the track record proves itself to be consistent with what I'm saying.
Agreed.
This is Matt Lancer, voice of Anakin Skywalker on Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master?
For a drink. Sorry about the mess. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Michael Kogge, welcome back to Rebel Force Radio, and thanks for joining us in the Cantina this week.
This is amazing, guys. Thanks for letting me return here. This is, I think it was, 8 years ago that I was on?
Oh, maybe not that long ago, or maybe it was. I remember like around the time of the time of The Force Awakens, because you, of course, wrote the junior novelization of The Force Awakens. I think that was the occasion.
Yeah,
and The Last Jedi.
That was the occasion. And The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah.
Wow.
So
the whole trilogy.
Yeah, the whole trilogy. I got to kill all the characters off. I am the only author. I think I'm the only person who got to do in this galaxy who had to kill off the big three. I had to kill them.
Wow.
Han, Luke, and then Leia. All my childhood heroes. I had to take them down.
And that guy that killed Chewbacca, he thought he was really doing something back in the day. Look at you.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, and in addition to doing that came the added responsibility of you being privy to what was happening in those stories before most mortals.
Absolutely. I did have an insider's view of the process for the most part. And it was a fascinating view of how Star Wars is made, at least today, and the movies.
What I'm thinking about, though, is the transition period between Colin Trevorrow moving out and J.J. Abrams returning during the Rise of Skywalker developmental phase. Did that throw you any curveballs from where you were on the playing field? Did you have to switch gears? Or was this way later in the game by the time they came to you?
It was way later in the game that by the time I knew we were going to work from Chris Terrio and JJ's script versus Collins. I never saw a draft of Collins' script, and then it was a movie in progress, so they were writing pretty. I mean, the script was changing a lot as we were writing. So it was a movie that was rapidly moving when I got on board, which was great to see. I mean, they were really trying to perfect this film and do the best they could. So
yeah, right,
yeah, and I mean that's like a lot of films today because of the way editing is, and you can deliver the quote print, right, the digital print to the studio or to the theaters in a couple of days, then you can keep editing till the very last minute.
And in addition to your job is working on the junior novelization of the sequel trilogy, you also have a long career of Star Wars Insider magazine columns and articles. And is there one of those that stand out as a favorite to you from over the years?
You know, I think I did a couple of them that I really love. I love the I kind of told the history of the Star Wars radio dramas, and
yes,
I did a 2-part article back in, was it 2011 or something, both on Star Wars and then the Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi, and I found a lot of interesting stuff that had never been uncovered before. You know. It was really some wild stuff. They even, you know, one of the things that I don't know a lot of people know, but there was a writer hired before Brian Daley to write the radio dramas. And he turned in, a British writer, because at the time there was a BBC co-production. And at the time, I think he came up with his own take on Star Wars, which was completely different than what the movie was. It was more like Lord of the Rings. At least that's what the producer Richard Toscan said, which I found fascinating. I would love to find those scripts someday. Who that writer was, I don't know.
That would be very cool. We just had John Tenuto on a couple weeks ago, and John and his wife they just wrote. There you go, a full book on the making of the Star Wars radio dramas. And I'll be honest, that did not come up. But that's very cool. Now, what's also interesting, though, is that since you covered that for Star Wars Insider and you were writing about the journey of adapting Star Wars for audio format, we're going to talk about your audio drama project here shortly. But what did you learn from that and Brian Daley's journey and what he had to do that you could then apply when you got the gig to adapt these junior novels? How much of you to put into the script? How much knowing what you have to or are able to add to it and all that?
Yeah, well, you know, one of doing those articles for the Insider and then also doing a kind of a biographical article on Brian, I went to Brian's house and met, I know Jim Lucino and I know Lucia St. Clair Robeson, his wife, and she had his office still at the time. It was still made up, you know, as if he hadn't left.
Wow!
And cool. His files were in the corner, and then on his desk there was a little image of that he had drawn of like a triangle, and it said "Pick 2 of 3." And he was trying to write Return of the Jedi, and he was very sick at the time. But it was, I think that each end of the triangle was speed, quality, and then something like quantity. And he could only pick 2, right? So that's what he was thinking when he was writing. And I found that to be a really good marker for what novelizing or adapting movies is like, because the process, you have to write fast and furiously. You have to turn in these drafts, you know, so quickly. And I mean, I had to write The Force Awakens in 2.5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
Yeah. And it's just a lot of, and the other thing is what you don't want to do is I'm not a transcriber, right? And I'm not a translator. Okay. I'm a writer, and I take I have my own point of view and my own viewpoints, for characters. So, Lucasfilm they're really good at giving authors the flexibility to kind of add their own take on things. And I added scenes in Rise of Skywalker that weren't in the film, and
really?
they liked. Yeah.
That might be a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
It could be a good thing in retrospect.
What happened in one of the scenes? Give us an example of one of the scenes.
It was based off, I think, a script extract that didn't get made. From what I remember. But what it was at the opening of Rise of Skywalker, I have Kylo Ren. He's on what's that? Mustafar, right? And I have him going
at the very beginning,
the ruins. Yeah, the ruins of Darth Vader's castle. Mm-hmm. And so in the Rise of Skywalker and throughout my junior novels, he's looking to connect to his grandfather. He's looking for a way to connect to Darth Vader. And finally, in the Rise of Skywalker, he goes to Mustafar, of course, and that's where you see him in the beginning of the movie. But I kind of expand that scene, and he goes into the crumbling ruins of Darth Vader's castle, and he's looking for some way to connect to Darth Vader. And basically, all he hears is silence. But I thought it was a really effective scene, and I really liked writing, kind of connecting it to the larger mythology, but also to his character and who he was. And who, at least I, as a writer, thought he was. Right. So it's that link to Darth Vader and his trying to follow in the footsteps of Vader over Luke or his mother that I find it kind of make him interesting.
What I like about that is that he's trying to reach out to Vader, but Vader's not there. Vader's not reaching out to him. Vader's redeemed. Vader doesn't exist anymore in the same way that when Vader was around Anakin, and from a certain point of view, didn't exist anymore. Is that kind of where you were going with that, Michael?
Absolutely. And although I think this is also a weird thing, the dark side is as much about the past. It's actually more about the past than it is the future. Okay, in a weird way, and I think maybe there is some ghost of Darth Vader that could exist. In some way. Maybe his spirit is disassociated. So his lingering effects are still felt throughout the galaxy, and his shadow is still haunting the galaxy, even during the First Order reign, even though he's been redeemed as a human being, right?
Yeah.
So I find that an interesting theme. I also, so when Kylo Ren is on Endor, the moon of Endor. What's the name of that moon? Kefir, right? He's in the ruins of the ruins, right, of the Death Star. And then he's trying to connect to Darth Vader again, to his grandfather. But who does he connect to? He connects to his father. Which was kind of a cool moment. So
that brings a whole new... Next time I watch that movie, that's what I'm going to be thinking.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that's what we writers get to do, and that Lucasfilm was really good for allowing us to have our own kind of take. And I'm cool with the way I view canon is it's all stories, it's all interpretations. The movies, of course, are the top, but I don't necessarily want to read something that's just a regurgitation of something else. I want to read something fresh and new, even if it's different, even if it doesn't fully work within.
I just like how those adaptations do provide some alternate information that you don't get in the film. And those are the novelizations, I think, that work the best. And we've seen them going all the way back to the original film. The novelization that was ghostwritten by Alan Dean Foster with George Lucas's name on it. That featured a lot of stuff we didn't get in the first Star Wars film. And the knowledge of those events that happened within the story really fueled the hardcore fan back in the day. And I still think it's effective to fuel the hardcore fan of today. Now, this book, the Star Wars radio dramas, you get a shout out in here.
I do. Oh, great. That's great.
Yeah, they reference your find in Brian Daley's office, that hand-drawn chart. It says, author Michael Kogge is part of a series on the radio dramas for the Star Wars Insider, uncovered a hand-drawn chart by Daley that further demonstrated the dilemma faced by the Jedi production team. I don't know what the context that's within, but Daley wrote Return of the Jedi in the center of a triangle, and at the corners wrote cast size limit, 6-episode limit, and Star Wars canon, as a reminder that Daley couldn't have everything he wanted this time around. He wrote, pick any two.
Yes, when I was saying quality, and speed, I mean, that's my memory, but that's it. I think it's essentially the same.
Right, right. Your interpretation of that, and so do you? And your ability to recall that was so quick that must have really stuck with you and been something that you think about as you're working on these, or we're working on these types of projects.
Absolutely. Now, cast size, you don't have to worry about as a novelizer. You have to worry about it in the radio film, because the more people you add, the harder it gets. And so you have to cut things down. What you do feel is the budget, you only have so much budget when I'm doing the John Carter radio drama. I've never looked at a spreadsheet before like this as to how much I can add and how much we can afford in order to bring cast aboard, and then the more cast you bring, the less money you have for production. So there's this constant battle. And audio drama is like independent film in that you don't have a very big budget. You have to do they're mostly passion projects. And Brian, I know he wanted to do Return of the Jedi for a long time, and it had been like 12 or 14 years from The Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. And it was clearly a passion project for him to finish it up.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, I did uncover, by the way, one of the other things that I mentioned in that article is I uncovered this lost prelude that he had written. It's one of the first drafts that they eventually took out, where Luke meets up with not Biggs, but Fixer and Tammy again. Oh. And they have a conversation, or even a confrontation on a bridge. I believe that's what it was.
Oh, it wasn't at the high school reunion. It was just somewhere random. Okay, I was picturing the high school reunion and the buffet table, and maybe there's a confrontation there. But this was just in some random place. Okay.
I think it showed Luke's growth, and I think I know why they cut it out. It was it was a first draft, but I think the idea behind it was brilliant, because that is all of episode 1 in the Star Wars radio plays, Luke and his friends on Tatooine. And I think coming back home and finding those old people again, and it's like you can never go home again. They don't get you. They're still working at the gas station, and now you're the most powerful Jedi in the universe, right? And they don't get you, and you don't particularly understand them anymore. Or maybe you do, but you feel completely awkward.
You've moved on.
Yeah.
You've moved on. And Michael, you've moved on now from Star Wars to John Carter. So tell us a little bit about the audio drama that you are currently working on.
Well, yeah, thank you. So John Carter has a long history, actually, with Star Wars. In many ways, John Carter of Mars is the first version of Star Wars, right? It's where Lucas drew a lot of his inspiration for Star Wars while he was writing it. And so I was, I had come up with, I had a relationship with the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. And I thought, these books, this classic series of books, there was a 2012 Disney movie, but they've never really been explored like they could. And I thought an audio drama would just be a great way to reintroduce this story to new fans and also kind of excite old fans too. So I approached the estate. We brought aboard a director and a production company, Pocket Universe Productions. They basically hired me to adapt and show run the series. And it's been a long process. But we have a Kickstarter right now to help fund this. This is all officially licensed and authorized, and it's been a really great experience. I mean, I've been thinking about Star Wars and thinking about John Carter at the same time, and seeing all the connections. Words like Sith, that actually came from John Carter of Mars. That's on Mars. It's a giant wasp creature. But Lucas must have really liked the word so much that he used it to describe the enemy, Jedi. And Jedak is a word from John Carter. Maybe Jedi came from that. Banth is another word. Bantha. Yeah. So, yeah, it's full of this stuff, you know?
But I'll say this. When I think about the Book of Boba Fett and the famous meme, like a Banth doesn't really connect as well as like a bantha. Remember that?
Yeah.
The meme? Okay. I just want to make sure you don't think I'm like just babbling incoherently here. But wow, that's great. And you have some star power attached to this audio
We do.
drama.
Yes. Lucasfilm fans. One of my favorite series actually from Lucasfilm is the Young Indiana Jones series. I basically grew up on that series. It's a great series, a great way to. I know Lucas's effort was to teach history, and it definitely does that. You have stuff like the Irish Rebellion of 1916 as an episode on ABC television. I mean, it's just amazing that he got stuff like that. Those World War I episodes with Sean Patrick Flannery are fantastic. So Sean actually is part of our radio drama, and he's playing John Carter, and he's a wonderful collaborator. He's an executive producer on the series, and it was fantastic to cut the trailer and hear his voice as John Carter on Mars. And if you go to the Kickstarter page, just type in John Carter audio series in Kickstarter, you can listen to the trailer, and it's cool to have young Indy as John Carter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is there a target date for release that you guys are aiming for?
Well, the Kickstarter right now is going to complete funding September 18th. And that after that, I will be writing the series and then hopefully getting into production in winter and early 2025 for a hopeful spring 2025 release, spring-summer release.
Wow, this is something to really look forward to. John Carter of Mars, the audio series. If you want to see this thing come to life as quickly as we do, head over to Kickstarter and do a search of John Carter of Mars, the audio series, or just John Carter audio series. It'll take you right there. And I know there's a lot of fans of John Carter who listen to this show. What did you think about the Disney film from, I think it was like 2012?
I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. So, and there are a lot of fans that have expressed that too. They often say, "Are you is there going to be a sequel to those or a TV show?" And I'm not saying this is connected to that, but in the spirit of the John Carter movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's something that I certainly enjoyed, and I think a lot of Star Wars fans would enjoy it as well, and get them pumped up for your audio series. As a matter of fact, Paul Bateman and myself, we dedicated an entire episode of Star Wars influences to the John Carter of Mars Star Wars connection. So you can find that in our archives or at rebelforceradio.com. Now, congrats on this, I'm sure to be successful campaign.
Well, it's already funded. So
it's 400%. Yeah,
that's
although,
awesome.
Although
it's happening.
That's great. So does that mean?
Although the money need we can always use more for budget.
Sure,
as you guys know, it's
right. This stuff doesn't come cheap. We just make it look that way. But being 400%, does that mean that you're able to be maybe a little bit more ambitious with the project than you had hoped? Are there some chains that are now taken off?
Yeah, every dollar we have a breath of a sigh of relief. Really,
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can. I think cast wise, it really helps because we can start casting people that are really talented and deserve the money that they make. I think that's really important. Yeah. So I mean, we have an internal goal which is much higher than the funding goal to just make it happen. So we're slowly reaching that goal, and I think we're going to be able to do it by the end of the Kickstarter.
Great, perfect, congrats. And let's make John Carter of Mars, the audio series, bigger and better than anyone could possibly imagine. Let's pump up the funds for this bad boy and make sure that no costs are cut during the production of this great audio drama that we all are looking forward to. Now, Michael, before we let you go, we know you're a huge Star Wars fan. We know of your incredible and successful history with the franchise. So we would like to throw a few questions at you that were actually compiled. They were compiled for us by Yoda. He faxed them to us from Dagobah. Of course, Dagobah, they don't really have text. They have no cell towers on Dagobah, so he has to use
Elon
your
Musk's
fax
Starlink
machine.
hasn't reached Dagobah yet.
Not yet. But I think that's the first stop for that guy.
Yeah.
But so Yoda compiled these questions. We asked him to do this to really take the pulse of the notable Star Wars personalities and actors and authors we have on this show. And it's not trivia. It's all very subjective. It's based on your personal opinion and personal preference. And it's called the Yoda Questionnaire.
The Yoda Questionnaire.
That's right. Thank you, Richard Cheese, for that great intro. As Jimmy said, Michael, fear not. There are no wrong answers to this. However, as we like to say, there are some answers that are more right than others.
Yes.
But again, no pressure.
So you might get high fives or you might get a kick in the shin. It all depends. Verbally, of course. Verbally.
Right. No. Through the force. All right, Michael, are you ready for the first question of the Yoda Questionnaire?
Ready I am.
All right, roll.
Ooh, we're off to a good start already.
Judges, that was in the form of a Yoda syntax. I like it. Question number 1 for you, Michael. Who or what, in the interest of inclusivity here, who or what is your favorite Star Wars character?
C-3PO.
That may be a first,
what,
ladies and gentlemen.
I guess.
I think that's a
I don't think anyone's ever... Yeah.
Not being critical. Just an observation. Tell us a little more.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think my love of the radio plays. It's him. Basically, he and Luke are the main characters, and he's just fantastic. Anthony Daniels is fantastic in those radio plays, and it really elevates his character. So when I was writing his death scene in the Rise of Skywalker, when he's on that, he's being worked on in by Babu Frick.
Babu Frick.
Yeah, I was quite moved, that here I was killing off C-3PO, but of course he didn't die. But he
didn't die.
Yeah, so
he gets almost a death scene though, without actually dying. He pulls a Leonard Nimoy there.
He does.
Yeah, okay.
To a certain degree, I guess.
Well, Spock did. He came back, man. He came back right away in the next movie.
I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed the part where 3PO had no memory at all, and he was just kind of babbling, and I really enjoyed that. I noticed an incredible consistency, too, between the 3PO that wasn't memory wiped and the 3PO that was memory wiped. He really maintained a lot of his own unique personality during those moments.
Yeah, the personality is like hardwired in there.
Yeah, and well, I think you're never get. I mean, C-3PO is. It goes to show the every droid is their own individual. But I actually got to work in some of that memory magic at the end when R2-D2 loads up his memory again, and he remembers the first time he met R2, and it's kind of a touching scene right at the end. I kind of end with C-3PO. Yeah, in the novelization.
I need a copy of this. I have a couple of. I think I have the first two you did, The Force Awakens. That one I definitely know I have. And The Last Jedi, I believe I have. And I believe I've read it. But man, I have not. There's a lot going on in your Rise of Skywalker story. And any additional information that you can add to that finale of the trilogy is welcomed by me with open arms. So I'm not a hater of The Rise of Skywalker like some are. I actually find a lot of redeeming qualities to it as a film, but more is better. More info is better when it comes to Rise of Skywalker.
It's a little sparse on the deets.
What did you provide as far as the Return of Palpatine? Did you go into any real in-depth explanation for why this guy we presumed was dead since the end of Return of the Jedi is now all of a sudden back?
I didn't do that. I think Ray Carson did that in her novelization.
A little bit.
I focused mostly on the heroes and the surprise of him coming back. And I like that. I like that surprise. And I thought JJ was correct in bringing him back to tie it all together. The Rise of Skywalker, to me, it's a big adventure. You know, it's a big, almost like a kid's adventure, like a Goonies kind of adventure for Star Wars. And I mean, I like it for that quite a bit. And because they go to so many different planets, and there's a MacGuffin, and there's a little mystery. I think it's a really fun movie, and it was a lot of fun to adapt because it was so big, and it was hard to fit all that story in addition to doing my own thing within the limits of a young adult or middle grade novel. So,
and I will you have to keep it a little more straightforward for the younger readers, I believe.
Sure, that no other villain could have tied it up with the bow other than Palpatine. You know, maybe the explanation left us wanting, but certainly I don't think anybody was really, I don't feel anybody was really arguing that it shouldn't have been him. He was the natural, of course.
How did the heroes, in your take, rationalize his return, since you said you went more for their perspective? Because that gets derided a lot. A lot of people look at that Poe Dameron sequence where he says, somehow Palpatine survived. But they completely disregard that Hobbit there says, cloning, dark side magic. He says a Sith magic, something like that. And so people completely disregard that. They just think the explanation is somehow Palpatine returned. So how did your heroes, in your take, rationalize it?
Well, I started every of the novelizations out with a preface because I looked at it as one big fairy tale, and I wanted new readers to be able to enter the book, even if they hadn't seen Star Wars, to have a background. So I kind of explained things. It was like an opening crawl that was written in a fairy tale kind of language. Okay, and it's omniscient point of view. It's very broad. And one of the things what does the Emperor want more than anything else? He wants eternal life, right? That's what this guy is seeking in the prequels. Okay. And so that's his motivation. So of course he's going to come back at the end. because that's what he's been wanting to do for his entire career, to live forever. And so that satisfied his motivation for me. Okay. Darth Vader, that wasn't Darth Vader's motivation. Darth Vader's motivation was more, maybe to rule, maybe a sense of revenge, and maybe a sense of anger toward how he had been treated. But the Emperor wanted to live forever. That was his main goal. And I think that's what the Sith want overall, too. So, and now getting to the first part of your question is, how did the heroes react? I had the sense that they were as surprised, as dumbfounded as everybody else, and they didn't understand. And it's one of those things where you can have a problem that erupts, and a major problem you didn't see for coming, and all you have to do is you have to react to it. You don't have time to think about it. So I think that's what I was thinking of. The Emperor's Return, oh my gosh, we've got to do something. That's
what you got.
Oh wow, you just
Max just downloaded it. He just downloaded
I got the audiobook. I just downloaded it. Yeah, so I'm going to listen to this one. I was going to order it on Amazon, but I saw the audiobook was available. You as an author, do you get frosted when people just go the audiobook route, or do you want them to sit down and flip the pages that you typed?
I love audio. I'm cool with it. And I love Star Wars audio too. I think it's a great way to experience Star Wars fiction.
Yes.
And for a long time, I was just listening to books on audio, but I've actually kind of moved back into the print format because I miss the texture of books. I miss the pause you have to the reflection of reading. I kind of the patience it takes. I like that a lot too. So yeah, but Star Wars is very good on audio, and Random House does a great job.
They sure do. They really do. And it's all enhanced with the soundtrack and the sound effects. It's really great. So, okay, let's continue the Yoda questionnaire. Yoda's not getting any younger.
No.
So we better get into the questionnaire.
All right, Michael, we're going to venture over to the dark side a little bit with this next question. We asked you who is your favorite. Now we're going to ask who is your least favorite? Your least favorite Star Wars character. Who or what?
My least favorite Star Wars character. Oh boy. Who do I not like? Maybe Jabba the Hutt from the first version of the special edition.
We have had this one. We've had this answer before. And I'll tell you what, you're near and dear to my heart because that is up there for me. That initial crack that they took at putting Jabba back in the special edition. And
I'm sorry for all the artists that did that. I don't mean to disparage
but you know what?
them,
It's like, look, it's like when your kid brings you, a drawing and the guy's got 7 fingers. It's like, no, wrong, bad, sorry, send it back. Someone should have sent that back because it wasn't good even then. Okay? It wasn't good even then. I'm going to defend you on that, Michael.
He doesn't look like he does in Return of the Jedi, and it's only been 3 years. Yeah.
At all. And what, it was George sitting there saying, "Wow, he's younger." I mean, come on. 3 years? What's he been doing in those 3 years? Jeez.
I love it.
All right. Since you're an author, I think you're going to... This is a rarer question on the Yoda questionnaire. We don't ask this a lot because it's hard to find somebody that has good answers, but you're an author. I think you'll have a great answer. What is your favorite Star Wars word? Star Wars has such a great vocabulary. You were talking about some of them being borrowed from the John Carter series from George Lucas. George had an ear for words. What's your favorite Star Wars word?
I like lightsaber. I like how it's combined as one word. And I don't know if that's been if that appear. It probably did appear in some science fiction story that George read. But if it even if it did, it's brilliant because he didn't say laser sword. Oh well, he did. He actually does in moments.
Sure.
But he didn't call it.
And in earlier drafts. In earlier drafts, it was referred to as a laser sword. Maybe it was the third draft when George introduced the term lightsaber.
You know, and it's that authenticity where everybody gets it. My 3-year-old kid understands what a lightsaber is, right?
Oh yeah,
they get it. Yeah, and so when people talk about George Lucas's writing, they need to talk about the way he fixed this all together, you know, and it's rather brilliant. So I like that word, and I like Jedi a lot. I think it's a great word, and it comes from Edgar Rice Burroughs, I think. But you know, he did a really nice job, kind of mixing it in his own verbiage.
All right, now what is your least favorite Star Wars word? Is there one that you feel like, oh, I'm writing a Star Wars book, I got to get it in there. I just hate this. Or how do I fit this in? Or how do I spell that again?
That's so interesting.
I mean, there's some stuff in there that I could, that's just not appropriate.
Like a Star Wars
jazz
curse
music.
word?
Yeah.
There you go. That's a good answer.
Jazz music? Is that what you said?
No, Swank. What type of music? Let me ask Jason. Let me ask Jason.
Okay.
Because me and Jason will go there because we're our heads are in the toilet. Jason.
Yeah.
What type of music does the Figrin Dan Mos Eisley Cantina band play? It's a specific type of music.
Dang. And it's wow.
Come on, don't make me say it.
I don't know it. I don't know it.
Well, why don't we find another? Let me give you guys another word here. But yeah, that's a word.
It sounds like jazz. But take away the A and put in the letter I, and it's
George wrote this?
No,
I don't.
What was this, an Alan Dean Foster thing?
No, I think it appeared on a soundtrack or something, like some soundtrack.
John Williams did this?
Or, no, not John Williams.
Who's
Leave him out of
responsible
this.
for this?
We got to research
his name
this.
out your mouth.
Hey, listen, we're going to research this, and we're going to find out which Yahoo is responsible for calling it that. The type of music that the Figrin Dan and the Modal Modes play is called that?
I don't think you can take that back, Michael.
That's a great answer.
I don't think I can.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Unfortunately, my knowledge of this stuff is super, super deep. You know, my head is full of this stuff. So,
well, that's why you're on RFR, my friend. That's exactly why you're talking with us tonight. And also because you're a great guy, and we go way back. You are a friend of the show. You worked with us on the Smuggler series, at least one of them.
Absolutely.
You played a hand in the live audio dramas that we produced at Star Wars Celebrations.
Yeah, those were great. They were a lot of fun. I just contributed a little bit of a dialogue, you know, but they were a lot of fun. It's a great time, you know. Are you guys doing any more?
Well, you know, the nothing but blue sky ahead of us, so never say never. It could happen. But they are incredibly labor-intensive projects to take on. I mean, I was working on it all the way up until showtime. So
I can vouch for that.
Always in motion, the future is.
One last question here for you, Michael, and we've customized this a bit for you. So if there was another Star Wars movie to be made and the story was written, another Star Wars movie is going to be made, and the story is written by the one, the only George Lucas himself, and he's asked you to write the screenplay, to adapt the screenplay, and you're sitting there with the maker as he's reading your screenplay, what would you like to hear George say to you as he finishes the final page?
So George tells me, he gives me the script, and what does he say again?
Well, he's asked you to adapt his story into a screenplay, and you're sitting there with him as he's reading it. What would you love to hear him say to you as he finishes the last page? You sat there in silence for over an hour.
Yeah, just staring at him.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I mean, I would just be so. I mean, appreciative of the opportunity, but I mean,
better than casting.
Yeah, I would. Wow. I mean, I would have to know this story. I know that I would potentially ask him questions about it, and I'm trying to think as a writer here, and then maybe even kind of offer suggestions. You know, I know George has his own vision, but
you'd like him to sit there and pepper you with ideas, like how to make this better, how to make that better.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope he would ask that if he's having a collaborator. But I would, first of all, I would love if George Lucas wrote a final Star Wars film. And I was really sad to hear that he. I heard that interview. I guess he did a con this year, where he said he had.
Oh yeah,
from
no, he was
filmmaking.
he was at Cannes Film Festival. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was being celebrated with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And George spoke very candidly up on the stage at Cannes.
Yeah. And he said he had retired. And I actually don't want him making Star Wars. I would love him to make one of his experimental films. I would love to see, I mean, everybody go back and watch THX 1138, the feature and the student film, and then American Graffiti. I mean, gosh, this guy is in Star Wars. I mean, that's the trilogy right there. You don't need anything else.
Yeah, it's a trilogy of the mind of a filmmaker, definitely.
Yeah,
and an innovator.
And an innovator, absolutely. So I wish, I mean, my heart longs for George Lucas to make another film because he's a fantastic filmmaker. So even if this wasn't the Star Wars that I thought of that he had given to me to adapt, I would be just kind of amazed and appreciative, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he was kind of forced out of his own franchise by the corporation and just sick of it, I think, at the end of the day. He had run into studio interference early in his career, then cultivated his career so it would be completely free of studio intervention. And then, at the end of his career, he had to deal with it in the harshest of ways, where the studio intervention was actually being done behind his back. And he didn't even know it until it was too late. And then that was it for him. I mean, it only reinforced all of the motivations he had as a younger filmmaker to go entirely independent. It only reinforced it. And it was kind of sad to see, especially when you consider his contemporaries like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola. They're still very active. And George Lucas should be on the playing field as well. I agree with you, Michael Kogge. Now, if his experimental films are something like, all right, we're going to reanimate this dead pig, it's like, whoa, wait a second. We're getting too experimental here, George. CGI wasn't good enough for him. He actually has to really create life. No, we don't need to see that. But that's me going off the deep end with my own sick weirdness. But I agree with you very much, Michael Kogge.
Yeah, no, and look, and I think I wrote those novelizations as for the sequel trilogy, as if I actually imagine this as if George Lucas was here and I had his spirit with me. I mean, that's how because I wanted to approach those movies and my story, my view on the story as a whole of a 9-part saga. So I really did all I could to connect it to the prequels and the original films. And I did it out of the love for George Lucas's films. And I think the filmmakers all did it too, out of the love for George Lucas's films. Everybody has their own point of view and their own artistic kind of statement to make, but I do think that love is in those sequel films. Yeah, and I also wonder sometimes, guys, what it would be like if there was only Star Wars, and that's it.
Just one movie,
right? Just one movie.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's enough. It's enough. It's such a beautiful film on its own. And I know this is expanded on for 40 years, but there's kind of a beauty to that purity, I think.
There is a beauty to the purity. But I really have enjoyed the 40 plus years of collecting stuff and watching a community build around Star Wars and watching it grow and progress with new generations. I really think that there's a lot of value in that. And I think the durability and longevity of Star Wars has created much more than just an entertainment empire. It's created a lifestyle for a lot of people. And you can obviously go too far off the deep end as far as it's all concerned, but at the end of the day, I think it's mostly a positive thing. The way that we've all been brought together through Star Wars. And I don't think it would have had that potential if it was just a one-and-done film. Look at Jaws. That was 4 movies, and you don't see a crazy type of community. How about even better than that? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's a small online community that gets together and discusses that film and picks it apart. And gosh, I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite films, but it didn't spawn a franchise and a community or a progressive theme that connected with future generations like Star Wars did. So I hear what you're saying. I dig your purist view. And sometimes I regress into all of that. Believe me, I do. A lot of times I really wish it was 1977 all over again. I was having a great time in 70. I didn't have a care on my mind in 1977. The only thing I worried about is when I was going to see Star Wars again, because it was not on demand. And that's what made it so precious to us from the original generation.
And when I say that, I think about how it is precious in that way and how you can watch that film by itself as a complete story and how it works, And then what he did, he basically, George Lucas, made my childhood. It's funny that if you had asked me as a little kid, hey, are you going to, you're going to write the novelizations, the young adult novelizations when you're older, that? For all these characters. For Luke, for Han and Leia. My little 8-year-old self would have nodded and said, yeah, of course, because I was so in love with it. I was so in love with all those films. And even in the dark period where no one was collecting Star Wars, I was going to garage sales looking for action figures. I was buying the role-playing game book. I was watching the Ewok cartoons and looking for the Ewok books. I got the pre-order for Heir of the Empire before it came out from Walden.
Well, you're running right down my resume. Hey, Michael, let me ask you if this sounds familiar. Michael, does this ring any bells? You go to the Star Trek convention and you ask the dealers in the room, got any Star Wars? And they say, check in the cardboard box underneath the table. And deals were to be had.
And that's where you find the Blackstone 3D comic books, Star Wars. I don't know if you guys know those.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, yes. That's where you find those things, I wasn't really a Star Trek fan at the time. I was a Star Wars fan, and there weren't many conventions. There was the comic book convention and the sci-fi Star Trek convention, but they didn't exist back then. So to see this all, it just amazes me how big Star Wars is now. And the little part I've gotten to play in it is I'm amazed. And I'm excited for my kids to be able to experience it all, but there is a lot of material out there, guys. There is a lot.
Oh, you're telling us. My gosh.
Sometimes we feel we're getting crushed under the weight of it all. And sometimes we feel the franchise is also getting crushed under the weight of it all. but there's always those diamonds in the rough that keep us coming back.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Michael, thank you so much for being here and being a friend of the program. Keep us up to date on how things are going with the audio series for John Carter. Successful Kickstarter campaign, but once people can actually hear this, it'd be fun to have you back, and maybe you can bring your friend Sean Patrick Flannery with you, and we can talk about what it's like to bring that to life.
Would love to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys, and this was a lot of fun. It's you guys clearly know a lot, and it's always fun to return here. So
awesome.
And great questions, by the way.
I'll let Yoda know.
Well, we'll tell Yoda. We'll fax Yoda and said Michael dug the questions. Yeah, he'll like that.
You can check him out at michaelkogge.com on the internet, and make sure you go over to Kickstarter and support that John Carter project. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, guys. And for the Kickstarter, by the way, it's not just the radio play. You get a Woola plush, if you've ever wanted a Woola plush, stuffed animal, never been done before. And a little role-playing game based on John Carter, a supplement.
Oh, that's cool.
There's a lot of, and a Princess of Mars in Martian. We actually translated the book into Martian.
Wow. That's amazing.
Good.
That's amazing.
Good stuff. Good
stuff.
Wow.
I got a few more questions for you, Michael, on that, but I'll have to wait for another interview. Anyway, Michael Kogge, thanks so much for being back here on RFR.
Thank you, guys.
Chewie, get us out of here!
Oh, what a good show. What a show. Thank you, Michael Kogge, for joining us in the Cantina. Check it out. The details of, just go to michaelkogge.com. It's 2 G's and an E.com. And check out all his projects, including the big John Carter of Mars audio dramas that he's working on. Very cool. I love to see that format is still something that people want to go back to, we know that as podcasters, Jim, you know that as a radio professional, something about that audio format that just won't go away, even though people have been predicting the end of it, the death of radio, the death of that kind of entertainment for a long time.
No, never. We will be in your skull until the end of times.
If you need more Rebel Force Radio, and we know you do, as we said earlier, go and check us out over on Patreon. You just go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, or go to the Rebel Force Radio website, click on the Patreon banner. Sign up today. You get weekly full show video, plus exclusive podcasts, many exclusive podcasts that you can't find anywhere else. You can't just go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and subscribe to them. You can only get them through Patreon on Rebel Force Radio. Check those out. And it's really is truly a fantastic community of Star Wars fans, the type of fans you want to hang out with as we talk about Star Wars and only Star Wars. We don't get into all that BS that a lot of other Star Wars commentators get into. We just talk about Star Wars. And get a taste of some of the things that we've done over the years. Check us out over on YouTube. As Mac mentioned, the 2 Mark Hamill interviews are up there. Last week we had Ann Newman and Stephen Sansweet from Rancho Obi-Wan talking about these incredible auction items that are going to be up for grabs as part of their big fundraiser next month, or excuse me, not next month, in October. And I said, I promise we're going to get the video up. The video is up now on YouTube, so check that out. So if you listen to the podcast and you heard Ann describing all these items, you can actually see the video. That's for free over on youtube.com. Please like, subscribe, comment on our videos. Really comment on them. I know you're like, oh, I love these guys. I listen to them every week. What am I going to comment on? Just throw a comment on, say RFR number 1. Just do it. YouTube loves that crap. So go ahead and throw a comment on there. I get updates on some of the comments that are on the videos. I know Mac does too. So if you have a question, you can always post them on those on the YouTube videos, and hopefully we'll see them and we'll get back to you. Also, we're on the socials on Facebook, on X, and Instagram. Follow us there. And we've got, we post all kinds of updates. If there's going to be a change in programming or when a new show is released, you can follow us there. They're really instrumental during those times when we're doing the live after shows. We give you updates when we're going live. It's very important. And the website for all things and everything, Rebel Force Radio, rebelforceradio.com. That's where you can find us, sort of the central hub for RFR. And really, to help us out the most, just please, it's free, costs nothing. Just do what you're doing right now, which is listening to this podcast, referring to this podcast to your friends. You got the Star Wars fan that you talk to at the water cooler at work, or you have lunch with, and you're not sure if they've ever heard of RFR or listened to a Star Wars podcast. Tell them, say, have you ever listened to Rebel Force Radio? That's how we grow our audience, and that's how we grow our ability to bring you the best Star Wars conversation anywhere on the internet. So please keep listening. Subscribe if you can. Leave us a review if your podcatcher of choice allows you to do so. We have just one simple rule we ask of you, please. Bake them good. Now do it for us this week here on RFR. We'll see you next week for a lot more Star Wars conversation and so much more here. Your source for the Force, Rebel Force Radio. For RFR, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Star Wars, huh? Well, let me ask you this. How many of you have ever dreamed of being in that movie? Well, you're in luck, because we're going to act out a scene, and I'll need a volunteer to play Obi-Wan.
Kenobi?
Mark, pick me! My whole life has been leading to this moment!
Like hell it has. If anybody's going to play Obi, it's me.
All right, step away, you foolish amateurs. Just keep back, keep out of it. The role is mine, with the acting and the groupies and the Luke, save me, with the lightsaber and the vwing.